All right, we got the green bar, thank goodness. It's going to be a little bit different. I am starting up. The chat may or may not fill up because one of the sources of me getting the word out is no longer going to be utilized by me. I know a lot of people are hurt by this, and I want to deeply apologize to anybody who feels personally hurt by my decision, but it was a necessary decision. And welcome to the Bonnet Chronicles. Honestly speaking, the Twitter thing shouldn't shock people. As the title says, the writing was on the wall for the longest time. I almost jumped ship when Jack left, honestly. And I'm not saying this as some cheerleader for Jack. I know that we were basically algorithms for problematic white guys' profits, but I feel like any person who has been a part of something for a long time, you support what you know. And while I wasn't going to act like I was BFF with Jack, at least I knew his level of problematic versus the person who now owns Twitter. I feel like a lot of people shouldn't be shocked. I am not a fan of Elon Musk. I tried to give him a fighting chance, but apartheid as Lord always rubbed me the wrong way. And now that he is going to own Twitter to bring in freedom of speech, his first tweet out the bat is saying, I hope my enemies stick around. My brain goes, no. Mm-mm. The time to bounce for me was a year ago, and I didn't do it. A, because I wanted to make sure that we kept the focus on voting, kept the focus on things that's important. But honestly speaking, like so many others, I gave in to a social media addiction that wasn't healthy for me. And I think people need to be realistic about it. How many of us stuck it around on Twitter because it was necessary, and how many of us just couldn't let it go? I realized when I started taking long breaks from Twitter, days, sometimes weeks, I felt better mentally. I felt like I wasn't constantly angry, didn't need to argue, didn't need to jump in the middle of things. And the last few months, it devolved into who hates who. Who can I talk to and not get into the middle of drama? So, honestly speaking, the writing was on the wall. But what truly troubles me about this whole situation is how this asshole, let me get his picture up there, is being treated like he's going to save Twitter. You see it already, people putting out their YouTube opinions on it. Some people are really excited that he's going to bring back free speech. And I need you to stop fucking saying that because freedom of speech was never under attack. Consequences of the shit you put on Twitter is what you don't want. And you're hopeful that apartheid edgelord will allow you to say whatever edgy bullshit you can to people in a captive audience. And what troubles me is the amount of people in my DMs begging me not to leave, which was, it broke my heart. And I want y'all to know, those of you who really came to me upset because of me deciding not to post on Twitter anymore, this isn't about y'all. I love the connections I made on Twitter. For some weird ass reason, y'all allowed me to rant, to vent, to share things about myself, my family, my mental health journeys. Over 20,000 of you thought that the things I had to say was interesting. And while I loved interacting with you on a regular, it's not enough when you know that all of that is just going to go into the pockets of somebody awful. And Elon Musk is an awful man whose family made money off the awful oppression of apartheid. And he continues to push things like I'm here for free speech. Whose freedom of speech is being treaded on? Don't nobody want to honestly answer that. You have places for your level of freedom of speech, but you know it is boring. Welcome to the chat, Beans. They don't want freedom of speech. They want a captive audience to their awful, and I refuse. And it's like I said, a lot of us were struggling. Once Case left, I felt like the writing was on the wall, but I tried to stick it out because A, we have a midterms coming up. B, there's so much on the horizon where we need to watch out for. But you notice that there are people that literally rose to prominence off of Twitter being awful. And I realized that I don't have to keep allowing my name to be associated to that. I don't have to be that little crop of algorithms for them to farm and profit off of. And that is what you're doing on Twitter, whether people want to admit that or not. The social connections are nice, and I will never spit in the face of that. Some of the people that I've met that hang out in this chat, some of the people that I've literally considered my friends, I met on Twitter. So I don't want people thinking, oh, this is just going to be an hour you shitting on Twitter. But honestly speaking, I want to pick apart why so many of us feel attached and connected to it, so that it will help some of you who are struggling on whether or not you want to keep going or fighting the good fight, as you're calling it. I've seen a lot of people on Black Twitter especially saying that nonsense on, oh, I'm not going to let this Nazi kick me off of Twitter. I work too hard. And I get it. A lot of us established both financial lucrativeness with Twitter, whether it's to promote your business or promote yourself. I know that the people that use Twitter to get help when they're in the crunch aren't just going to want to give it up. And I don't want you to feel like I am shaming you if you decide to stay. I didn't shame anybody who decided to stay on Facebook. And my Facebook profile is still up, even though I haven't posted on Facebook in 6 years. I just realized that I could walk away. I think people need to understand that this was not an easy decision. But my hope is that people realize that Twitter doesn't have to be your social media hub. Right now, it's hard though, because the alternatives can't handle the stress of influx of people. We crash common ground. And what bothers me is Common Ground looks like it could be the place because it has the posting abilities of Facebook with the same kind of reach as Twitter could have, but it can't hold the bandwidth. I was going to start posting stories and drawings and artwork on it. Can't access it. We overloaded it. Exactly, Beans. And that's the thing I think people don't understand. Because of our age, because of how many iterations of social media we've seen, we realize that nothing's permanent. If I can be 100%, I didn't even want Twitter when I had to get Twitter for work. And that's the thing I keep reminding people. When I started on Twitter, it was for a job. Gaming, journalism, because I really wanted that to be my career back then. Writing reviews, promoting stuff. That was my whole entire life. And then I realized that there had to be something beyond this. I was making connections with people on Twitter anyway. And a big ass election was coming up that I just felt like people were going to fuck up. And y'all proved me right. And I moved on to that. But the scary thing was how many people followed me for my opinion. And I had to constantly check myself because I got that ego for a bit. Once I hit past 10K, the sickness of it started to get in. What can I say to keep people interested? Then going viral, calling out Bernie Sanders was like one of the best and worst things that happened to me. Because it drew so much attention from all the right and wrong people. I made a lot of good friends, but I made a lot of people angry, and that was stressful too. Had people stalking me, trying to dox me, and that's when I was like, you know what? I'm putting everything out there. I have no shame to my game because everything I do is for my survival, and I have never done anything that I had to be ashamed of. So when people were threatening, oh, I'll put out there that you're on SSI. Okay. I started openly talking about my mental health. I was not going to let people shame me for my life. I earned every single thing that I went through with crazy parenting, with the fact that my life was not easy growing up Black in America. And I have no reason to be ashamed of anything that I go through. But Twitter will allow people to try to bully and pressure you, and I really feel like I gave them an immovable force. And I think that's what attracted a lot of people to my Twitter account. The fact that I am unapologetically me. And I think you can be that way anywhere. But for a lot of people, Twitter became a home. It's like that stoop. If you're from New York or any place, that comfortable hangout hub where you know everybody, where you can chill and you're like, hey, there's Joe. Hey, there's Jane. People get that sense of comfort and you don't want to let it go. I joined Twitter in fucking 2010 based off a job. Here we are in 2022, finally walking away from it. This is the longest online commitment I've had outside my relationship with Greg. And honestly speaking, it's scary when you think about walking away from something you've been a part of that long. But I realized long ago, growing up the way I did, moving from state to state, that I've never had a real sense of permanence anyway, and everything comes to an end. And I'd rather end on my own terms on a high note than to go out kicking and screaming, arguing with somebody like Elon Musk who doesn't give a fuck anyway. For everyone like me who's going to stop posting, walk away, deactivate, there are plenty of people who still want to be on Twitter. I know Twitter is not going to immediately hurt. But for me, this is me making a stand against what I feel is going to be a deluge of garbage. I can't hide the vibes that he is going to open up the floodgate for awful people to be openly awful in the name of free speech. He came out talking about, I hope my enemies stay. Who says stuff like that? Who even says they have enemies? I have people who try to hate on me. I don't give them enough attention in my life to call them enemies. If they want to view me as an enemy, that's on them. I don't have enough room in my already crowded headspace for that shit. And welcome to the chat, Mary Maven. Welcome to the chat, Terry Antigo, everybody who's in the chat. I just want you to know that this isn't to slant Twitter in itself, because for me, it had enough to keep me there for over 10 years. So I'm not going to pretend like, oh, Twitter just sucked. There are a lot of people on Twitter that sucked. A lot of people on Twitter that made that place awful, but I tried not to let it get to me because there were tools. So many tools to cut them out of the picture. You know? And that's the one thing I will give Twitter. For all the cesspool of garbage, for all the people who only got on there every day to argue, stir up shit, it was very easy for me to go, you know what? I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to be beholden to those numbers either. I tweeted the way I tweeted, whether I had one person follow me or whether the last total before I decided I'm not going to do it anymore was 25K. And while I'm humbled by that, I wasn't going to change who I was. And I think if that's your attitude, you will be fine on that app. But for me, it's a personal thing. It's a tire of seeing people profit off of my content while I continue to struggle to make sure that my family's taken care of. It is a tire of seeing people data farm and use our algorithms to push intrusive ads into our faces. I joked about it a lot on Twitter, but the fact of the matter is, after 40, so many of the ads were trained on things like cosmetics, which I know y'all look at me. I am a walking scar of a person, and I don't care. I do not ascribe to the norms of beauty. Never have, never been my interest. It's not that I'm saying that those who do, who need that, are wrong. I just do not connect to that kind of mentality. I've always felt like it was an abyss for women to constantly have to cover up things that people deem as flaws, to constantly put makeup on an already okay canvas. I have enough color. I don't need to add extra. That's never been a thing for me. But when you go on Twitter, you are slammed by ads of cosmetic this and that, and trying to make you, in your head, hate who you are. And I used to joke about it, but it really started to irk me logging in and having those intrusive ads. But I realize that's what you sign up for when you go on a free site and put in all of these aspects of your personality. And I realized that while I, by myself, can't hurt Twitter by no longer giving them that content, if I show people that it's possible, if I show people that, yeah, I will leave the Kalari Gamer Check thing up for as long as possible. Maybe they'll just take it down themselves. I don't have to log on. I've proven that on plenty of the breaks I've taken. I've proven that with Facebook. The urge to log on wasn't even there this morning. Now, while, mind you, I tried to log on to both Counter Social, which I'm not sure if all the digging that people are doing is right. I know that, like every person that runs these kind of sites, people are going to have problematic ties. I know that the people that were really loudly pushing Counter Social aren't people I would hang out with, like Proud Fraudulist. But I feel like a lot of those people lie about their connections to the people who run those sites too. So I want you to be smart wherever you go. You're not going to be supporting good people no matter what. Because to run a lot of these sites, you have to have capital. The broke people who really wanted to run decent social media sites realized they were hitting the wall. One of my friends, Adrian Jacks, a brilliant coder, realized how much capital it would need to run a social media site and came up with the problem of, can I run a social media site that would be protective to marginalized people? Because honestly speaking, one of my biggest issues with Twitter was dealing with a certain demographic. Now, you know I love people equally. I try really hard not to fall into the patterns of bigotry. But some of my biggest headbutts on Twitter, some of the people that caused me the most stress, the people that threatened me, that tried to stalk me, that called me a cult leader, were white people. So when Adrian tried to put together his social media site, I felt it in my blood what he wanted to do, but I knew he couldn't. And the reason it fell apart was because people like me weren't going to just not invite our friends based on the criteria he wanted set. And I felt bad at first, but I realized that we can't get into that mindset. It's a very seductive mindset to get into, of just having our own space separated from everybody else, but it leads to bad things. So that was the only issue that I felt we would have butted heads on. But I don't even think that was what he was really going for. But I think initially that's what he wanted. And it's a dangerous place to be. And I feel like Twitter is really going to become that kind of site too. Because as Black people start feeling less safe, as people start pushing their freedom of speech to call us even worse things and not deal with the consequences of the fallout of it, Twitter is going to become what Facebook became. The reason I stopped posting on Facebook, and it started well before the election even, was I seen the writing on the wall where people openly talked about refugees as if they were all criminals, where people were openly supporting a very awful person for president and saying things about people who we knew were children, but just happened to die with brown skin at the hands of vigilantes or the police. How awful they viewed the fellow human beings. And I realized I don't want to be on there anymore. And anybody who knew my old Facebook knew I was constantly on there, posting things about me, posting things about keto, recipes. It was just like I treated Twitter. That's why Twitter hurts too, because Twitter felt like a viable alternative. Y'all helped watch Kiddo grow up on Twitter if you followed me for as long as some of yous have. So I don't say goodbye to this site easily, but I realize that I am watching Twitter devolve into what Facebook was, and I walked away from Facebook no problem. The only difference was Facebook was only family for me, and a few people that I actually knew. Some of you found out after the fact I had Facebook and followed me, but honestly speaking, I think I topped out at 300 people on that, and the majority of them were actual family and friends I knew from Staten Island. I didn't use Facebook for popularity. I didn't need to. I had enough people I knew in real life that I didn't care about networking out. Twitter was something different because A, it started out for work things, but B, I really started to care about the political landscape. But if you had told me 10 years ago that I would have over a few hundred people, I wouldn't have believed you. I didn't really want all of that. And honestly speaking, it becomes overwhelming because you start feeling like you owe it to people to be on there. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have to log on every morning and see, oh, what was people tweeting about? And a lot of times it was stuff that got me angry, fired up. This is going to make me have to work for all the information that I want to put out there, really vet things, really do the stuff that I learned how to do when I was doing interviews for gaming magazines and stuff. I know I have the chops to do this. And while I will miss talking to people, like Beans has said, I keep in contact with all my friends. Y'all have ways to connect with me, whether it's on Discord, whether a new social media app crops up. Push comes to shove, if I see a DM and I can respond to it, I will get you my email information if you really need that. I am not going anywhere. These Bonnet Chronicles will stay on Twitch. I will be on YouTube doing mental health vlogs. The only thing I won't be doing is giving apartheid edgelord any content to make money off of. He still has millions of people that he will. And I just hopefully want you to understand what you're signing up for. Because that whole freedom of speech for me isn't that. Nobody is stopping people from being able to freely talk on Twitter or anywhere. What he is proposing and what people want is a captive audience to their conservative bullshit without any consequence. And if you want that, fine. If you want to argue with people, fine. When I first started in popularity, sadly, on Twitter, it was arguing with the pro-Trumpers. And I'm not even going to shy away from that. Most of the people that followed me because of the way I dragged pro-Trumpers. But that shit gets exhausting when that's all you do is log on and argue with people that A, have grammatic issues and are lactose intolerant. I didn't want to keep doing that. It's not fun after a while. First of all, you're really punching down if you have any measure of intelligence. B, they're like locusts. You hit one and then you have a whole bunch of others. And I realized I don't need to make my name off of that. My interest doesn't come from arguing with stupid people. And I'm sorry if that's how you get your jollies, but that's not for me. And I just want you to know that is going to be your future. And people are already speculating he's going to let that mango idiot back onto the app. But the mango idiot's already like, nope, my feelings are too hurt. I'm going to stay on Truth Social. Nobody's on Truth Social. Nobody really is on Truth Social, Gab, or any of those places. That's why when Musk was talking about buying Twitter, they were desperately thirsty, begging him to put the money in their shit instead. Because they realized that this is just a farm. And you are willing crops for these billionaires to make a bunch of money for. So you just need to understand that that is what you're doing when you stay on Twitter. You are lucrative data for them to mine. And if you're okay with that, be okay with that. But don't get mad at people like me who hit that wall and said enough's enough. And I got it all day that last day. From the conservatives who decided to waste their one interaction with me by saying, you're not going to go anywhere. Okay, if you believe that, fine. I know by even leaving the Kalari Gamer Chick Twitter up, people are not going to believe that that last tweet was my actual last tweet. But anybody who knows me from Facebook, who has seen my dead profile that has not had a post on it in almost 6 years, knows I can walk away from stuff. I didn't delete my MySpace either. I didn't delete my Zynga. When those fell apart, they just fell apart. I had enough stuff archived on the Wayback Machine, though, because I used the crap out of those. I like having a space where I can express how I'm feeling. But there are plenty of places where you can do that. And while, yes, Twitter had that immediate connection where you can post the content and have somebody respond, they are not the only places that do that. And while I don't see myself ever going back to Meta, because I'm not interested in a virtual Sims game. I'm a gamer. I don't need their version of the virtual world where they're just trying to sell ad space anyway. And plus, Jared is no better than apartheid edgelord as far as I'm concerned. He started Facebook as a way to rape women and turned it into a global industry that not only helps push misinformation, but isn't a safe place for anybody who's considered other. So yeah, Facebook, I don't miss it. And while I can't currently say that about Twitter because I do miss it, I miss my friends on there. I feel like it's going to be okay. Like everything, when you move, you get that feeling when you first move away from some place. Like when I first moved from New York, that feeling of, wow, I really did this. And that overwhelming of, I missed the familiarity. But I woke up this morning, I didn't log on to Twitter. I deactivated it from the studio on here and I realized I can do this. I was already distancing myself because so many people I cared about were leaving and they left years ago. Jen in New York, I don't know if some of you remember her, left Jen. She had a beautiful set of twin boys. One of the strongest voices I knew in politics. One of the few white women who didn't bow down to the pressures of, oh, I got to side with everybody else and join the Me Mom Brigade. She was on board with the K-Hive before K-Hive even had a name to it. She took a lot of threats. And as a mom of really young kids, she was like, no, I'm going to protect me and mine. And she left. And when she left, it was like, why am I still doing this? Why am I staying on an app that chases good people? You know? No. Bianca is an amazing young lady, a talented young lady. And before she coined the K-Hive, there was a few of us that were grouping up, trying to get then Senator, now VP Harris's name out there. But Left Jen was just a regular mom. And we all were working together to not only keep factual stuff on Twitter, but before the K-Hive became a thing, a lot of us, we were in private groups and DMs talking about how can we combat all the misinformation and narrative. And then Bianca came up with calling us the K-Hive and really trying to organize, and that shit bit her in the ass. And that was the reason why I distanced, because she was letting a lot of people in that talked a good game, but were in it for themselves. Like that one woman that tried to organize a Zoom call, and honestly speaking, there were just a lot of people who were in it to be famous, and Bianca got burnt by it. And I could have warned her, because when I tried doing the group thing, I got burnt. Dude literally was using my group to sexually harass women. And guess who got called out for it? The same person who got called the cult leader for daring to say, hey, think for yourself and vote. Apparently, telling y'all to think for yourself, telling you to put your own future into your own hands makes me a cult leader. Meetings every Wednesday, y'all, I make cookies. You know, instead of denying it, though, I just called it out for being ridiculous. Because getting upset by the people who were trying to say that wasn't going to change the fact that these people were trying to get under my skin. And honestly speaking, if I had the energy to run the cult, it would probably be one of the best daggone religious movements this country could use. But A, I don't have the energy for something like that. B, I don't have the patience. Because to be a cult leader, people have to rely on you. And there are times where I need to check out from things mentally, and I don't have the energy to put up with that kind of responsibility. So thank you, little Miss British journalist, but you were wrong. And Twitter's going to be full of her and her weird gotchas that aren't really gotchas too. So I hope you continue to enjoy that. I'm not going to miss that nonsense either. The only thing I will regret is there will be a vacuum of people who will only use Twitter to spread misinformation, but it's not my job to fight against common sense. And if something you read or ingest on Twitter makes you give up your right to vote, if something you read or ingest on Twitter makes you lean into awful, that's on your personality. I am tired of trying to shepherd people into being decent human beings. If you can't think for yourself and realize things need to be better without somebody constantly in your ear, without you constantly needing somebody to tweet that at you, that's a you problem. And it's hard for me to say that, but it needs to be said because way too many people rely on somebody else's voice to shake sense into them. And that's not a good thing. You should be working on self-improving no matter what, no matter who's watching. Because sometimes the only person who's going to notice any improvement in your life is you. And I realized that after 10 years on Twitter, over 10 years on Twitter, that no matter what, people aren't always going to see the achievements I make in my life. And I don't want that. I needed to learn that balance between my private life and my social media life. Because some people don't. They blur that line so badly and they get mad when, oh, everybody's in my business. But you put your business all over for people to see and then get mad because people judge you. You can't do that. You have to have that boundary, and some people don't. One of the things I loved about Kiddo was while he doesn't mind a picture or two, he wants absolutely nothing to do with social media. I wish I had had his tenacity. Honestly speaking, I envy the fact that he has absolutely no interest in it. Because I got bit by that bug early on, posting blogs and interacting with people. So it was a lot harder for me to take breaks and walk away at first. And now I realize that it can be just as exhausting logging on, watching friends fight, watching y'all fight over the stupidest shit sometimes too. One of the biggest arguments I seen the other day was a misunderstanding of words said to each other about, I think, what was the topic? I think it was a food topic of all things. And I was like, you know what? People just want to fight. And I understand that after the last 4 years especially, we came out of tense times where we couldn't trust people. Honestly speaking, between the year 2015 to 2021, my eyes were forcibly open to who I could trust. And yeah, the dress was a big one. So many people. I still don't know what a Wordle is, and I don't need to. I know some of y'all love it. I just don't want to be. So many things people were into that I just left alone because I feel like people don't realize y'all are just crops for algorithms with that stuff. All the stuff that people were making popular. But it's okay because social media is supposed to be that. But if you go in realizing it's a business, go in realizing your value, make that bag if that's what you're going for, make your friends or whatever you're in it for. If you get a sense of satisfaction for it, I want you to continue to. I don't want people thinking these Bonnet Chronicles are going to be, oh, Tim's just going to shit on Twitter. That's not the point of that. While I hate this fucker, while I hate the fact that he now owns the place that I used to call my hubbub, I needed that push to get away anyway. Because so many of you interacting with me made it hard for me to jump off. I'm glad he did it. The one positive I can take of this idiot buying Twitter is he gave me the push I needed to no longer be on there. And I will thank you, Mr. Musk, for that. Because honestly speaking, the whole idea that he's going to open up the floodgates to freedom of speech sits a cold chill down my spine. Because there was nothing stopping people from tweeting whatever they wanted. I talk very openly about mental health stuff, very openly with cuss words. My bonnet shorts are very unapologetically who I am. What I do is keep to the TOS. I don't harass people. I didn't bother people. And I think that is a major thing on Twitter that people need to work on. Because most of the harassment came from other people jumping into my mentions because, oh, I need to argue with you off of what you said. No, you don't. I don't owe you any interactions either. I don't go on Twitter to look for people to argue with, and I think a lot of people do. And if that's your jolly, good luck. I realized early on that that kind of lifestyle will burn you out, but a lot of people lean into it. Sadly, because it's entertaining for others. And you will grow a large following the more combative and argumentative you are. And that's sad because it really does deteriorate both your mental and physical health. And exactly, that is what really gets me, Beans. The whole idea that somehow he's gonna make free speech for people. No, he's not. This man has shut down anybody that dares talk bad about his company, dares just talk bad about him in general. He has a Napoleonic complex. And like I said, his first tweet out the bat was talking about, I hope my enemies stay because that's how we keep freedom of speech. And it's like, no, I'm good. I don't even consider him an enemy. After this, I probably won't think much about apartheid and Jalura anymore anyway, because that's how I've always handled stuff. When I've walked away from friendships, relationships, anything, once I cut that off, that's it. And I know it's hard for people. And like I said, this is only day one for me not being on, around, or posting to Twitter. So I could talk a good game. There might be days where I'm like, I want to go and see. I don't know. Like I said, for the last 2 years, whenever things got too stressful, just completely disconnect. And I think that helped make what I'm doing right now a lot easier too. And like I said, it'd probably be even easier if I just deactivate it. But like I said, what happens I deactivate and the deal doesn't go through? Or what happens if I deactivate and he realizes that he made a big mistake, he hemorrhaged a lot of money, which is what I'm hoping karma does to him, and that somebody actually socially conscious buys the site and gets it where it needs to be? I don't need to burn the bridge entirely, but I have a feeling I won't be crossing that bridge anymore. And like I said, some people will ding me on the fact that, oh, a lot of people quit Twitter and they completely deactivated it. That's good for them. They needed to. They probably couldn't trust that they wouldn't log on. Honestly speaking, today I woke up and instead of the first thing, which I normally will admit, the first thing I did when I got up and got kiddo ready for school was jump to see who tweeted what and what was in the trending. And today I didn't do that and it felt good. Granted, I was not feeling that great today. It's that ladies' time anyway, so resting was on my agenda. But I realized really quick that I didn't need to do it. So I know I'm going to be okay. And if this is you, if you are in that in-between, you're going to be okay. I told a friend 2 years ago when he was struggling with how to take breaks, do it at your own pace and realize that you'll even lurk. The first few times I started taking breaks from Twitter, I just lurked. I refused to type to people, even when they were purposely trying to get me to respond to them. And I realized that's how you have to do. Sometimes it takes baby steps to get away from it, because social media is a very addicting thing. You feel that dopamine hit reading and watching, and that's why so many people are into things like TikTok even. And welcome to the chat, Turtle Runner. And I don't blame you. And I want people to understand that. I am not judging anybody that still wants to make those connections because it becomes such a big part of our lives and system. And those of us with mental health, especially when you have something that is routine. For me, having that routine and having Twitter be a part of it was a big part of why I didn't leave years ago. But I realized that for every good, there was so much negative too. It was becoming frustrating to log on. And like I said, a big part of that was the infighting. And exactly, Beans, getting through 45, Twitter really did help that, despite him being on it for way too long too. And that was one of the things that I think made Jack leave, was the fallout of him standing up and saying, no more of that. He took the chance that Jarrett wasn't going to take until after he did it. And everybody fucking turned on him. And like I said, I am not a Jack cheerleader. I know, just like most white guys, he's problematic. But when push came to shove, and that orange idiot was being problematic to the point of causing the insurrection, Jack was the one that stood up. And he got fucking stabbed in the back for it. And whether you like him or not, and like I said, I don't have personal ties to him. He wasn't a great guy. He had very questionable political beliefs as well. But when push came to shove, he wanted that asshole off of his site. And the fallout for it he ended up losing the company. And don't think he didn't get pushed out. Those of us who worked in finance and dealt with corporate things, we could tell that was not a non-hostile action. He got a lot of pressure from awfully loud people saying, oh, this sets a bad precedent. You can't just kick somebody off, even though that person was literally causing a fucking political upheaval that could negatively impact so many, not just here in America, but abroad. But nobody wants to think on those levels. They just want to think, oh, Jack just bounced. Jack was fucking robbed. You can't convince me otherwise of that either. And like I said, I don't personally know the man. Like every other rich white guy, he had his problems. But like I said, all of this fallout started with Twitter when he stood his ground against Trump's shenanigans. And that little fucking orange man, baby, I'm gonna see Twitter. Yeah, good luck with that. You have enough legal troubles going on right now, mister. And don't think I won't be calling that out left, right, and center, because New York has been hitting him with all kinds of charges and contempt because he acts like he's above the law still. But you're not president no more. You are a regular, broke-ass citizen, and you're going to have to answer for all your crimes. And you're going to have to pay back all that money you owe Deutsche Bank and beyond. And your buddy Putin is going through some things trying to be a Napoleon with his war crimes. So you're not going to have him trying to bail you out because he's already tanked his country's currency too. These idiots have been making so many power plays that are only going to hurt them because they're not smart men. They've deluded themselves as so many of their fans into believing that they are, but they're not. Because you can't build a base on hate and fear and expect those of us who bother to study and educate ourselves that don't need to be caught up in the mystique of your fear and boogeyman bullshit to keep ascribing to your stuff. And what they did and their tactics might have worked on some, they weren't courting smart people anyway. That's why so many of them are dying to a preventable pandemic. So you court these people into believing, don't trust the government, but only trust this. Don't trust this, but only trust me. And then when something like out of your hand sickness comes into play, the base dwindles. And you're not going to convince people like me to side with you. So yeah, like I said, their strategy isn't a winning one. 2024 doesn't have me worried because it's going to be a lot of a repeat of 2021. And I already know who I'm voting for. I'm focused on this year's midterms because I need people to understand that who represents you locally can affect all of us nationally. And if you're sitting there complaining about awful things, about your finances, about the way law enforcement treats you, if your lot in life is kind of shitty or could be better, and your representative has an R by their name, there's your biggest problem. And you can be that problem solver. And I'm really tired of the apathy getting into people's pores. I'm really tired of people acting like things can't change, because when we all get together, change happens. Y'all need to be your own agents of hope. And I'm going to continue to use my voice on these Bonnet Chronicles. I'm going to continue to promote myself. It's going to be a lot more work without Twitter, but it's not impossible. And I need people to understand that too. I know for some people they're like, well, if she gives up Twitter, will she give these up? No, because this had nothing to do with Twitter. I will keep these channels for as long as I possibly can. Because unlike Twitter, I have full control over who I interact with on here. I have mods, I have you guys. Honestly speaking, this is way better for me than Twitter ever was for my mental health. And I know for some people, oh, Twitch can still be a place of harassment. I'm not saying that the possibility isn't there. I'm saying that unlike some of these young people that, get upset, nip that shit in the bud really quick. Like, honestly speaking, I can ban people, I can promote people. This is completely within my wheelhouse for social interaction. So, honestly speaking, I don't see myself going away from this medium anytime soon. And like I said, with social media, there's places like Discord, which I've set up with a lot of you, and I will keep that link going. There are places we can all meet up and talk. And I know that's what a lot of people need at times too. And I appreciate you guys for that too. I think the hardest part of walking away from anything is that feeling like I'm abandoning friendships, but I'm really not. For all the people that I still reach out to, I've always made ways beyond Twitter to talk to you guys. I feel like Twitter was just a vessel for people who just wanted to read inspiring words. And there are still plenty of eloquent people that will be on that site for you guys. I shouldn't have to risk mental sanity points to keep people I don't know happy. And that's what I felt like I was doing towards the end. And for me, if something's work and it's something that's going to pay off, that's fine. Like writing. All the writing work I'm doing, I am hopeful will pay off in helping open the door to people who don't feel seen. But that's work that I put in because I want to. Twitter became work that I was putting in because I felt I have to, and that's not healthy. Social media shouldn't feel like something you need to do. If it stops being pleasurable, if it stops being something that's fun, don't do it. It really is that simple. And for me, social media stopped being fun. And that's not a good thing. Twitter should have been fun. I tried to make it that way, especially towards the end, when I would put out tweets about music, when I would put out tweets about recipe. But you slowly felt yourself being dragged into them arguing about who's running in PA or who's running in New York. And it's like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. When it gets to the point where even having a political opinion meant you were more than likely choosing a faction and having to argue for that faction, that's not fun for me. I love supporting certain candidates. It doesn't mean I got to shit on other candidates. And I felt like there was a lot of people wanting to make themselves king and queen makers on the app too. And that's a dangerous game to play as well. And I also feel like calling out certain political antics will get you dinged as well. Like, I respect Maya. I thought that her 14-year-old campaign manager stunt was really stupid. And I feel like being able to say that shouldn't have caused a bunch of fallout. But unfortunately, having an opinion on things means you're choosing a side. I realize I don't feel like dealing with a daily battlegrounds. So I say this with all sincerity. If you still want to be on Twitter, be on there. My decision to not post anymore should not impact you in any way, but to show you that you can do it no matter how many followers you have, no matter how much you think your voice carries. You can still carry your voices in other places. I am not here to shepherd people away from social media. I'm here to make you more conscious of your presence on social media, of your value on it, and make sure that you know your worth. Because way too many people tie their worth into things and don't value themselves. And if you value yourself, if you value your voice, if you don't want to give men like Elon Musk more profits, then slowly you'll see. You don't have to log on every day. You don't have to do a cold bounce like I just did. But you'll realize that I don't have to log on. It's just not worth it. And it does. It feels like it is, because you go on there and it's nothing but negative stuff from the media talking about Biden's not reaching out to the youth. And all the antics of the GOP framed in the, well, how is that the Dems' fault? What DeSantis is doing in Florida is completely conservatives' fault. There were people that could tie every bit of his actions back to corruption, including those textbooks that he has a financial tie-in, him and Youngkin in Virginia. All of it is about profits and keeping people ignorant so that they can stay in power. But if you listen to the way the media frames it, it's still the Democrats' fault that these people are targeting children, targeting the right to consent, targeting women's right to choose. It is exhausting. And if I see another fucking tweet or a think piece on how the Dems need the message, what more message do we need to say? The other side is full on awful, wants to restrict our rights, our freedoms, and a chance at education. But you got enough people saying, no, they're not doing enough for you. They're not centering you. What have they done for you lately? And it's that fucking entitlement that I won't miss about Twitter either. And I'm sorry, it's exhausting every day trying to combat with common sense and reasoning when contrarianism flows like water on that site. I'm tired of trying to be the dam between the stupidity. I can't do it no more. It's exhausting. I can say all of that on here in the comfort of my space and not have to deal with, oh, I gotta block a bot today, or I gotta block Mr. Gun on Bible or American flag emoji types. And they came out of the woodwork as usual. And I was like, it's cute that you decided to bother me on my last tweet like that. I don't owe you any interactions. And I hope that those of you on Twitter realize that too, because they're going to try it. Like I said earlier, one of the more trying things about being on Twitter was dealing with that entitled demographic. The type of people that are like, I'm going to call a manager on you. Go ahead, bitch. This is my Twitter. What are you going to do? I realized after the last time out I got 3 years ago, after calling out some little white kid for telling me that I needed to support Trump because Kanye supported him, and I called him a stupid motherfucker, that I'm just going to stop interacting with them. Because apparently calling him a stupid motherfucker violated the TOS. And I was like, you know what? I will take that time out. And eventually they made me take the tweet down, which was like, I took the time out. You should have left the tweet up because it was, for real, a fact. He is a stupid motherfucker. But I realized that, you know what? Arguing with these types aren't worth it. They come and seek me out. I wasn't looking for them. And I realized that I don't have to interact with them. And that's how it's going to be on here. If somebody treads into the waters, as I like to call my bonnet, you will get dropped. I don't have to indulge. And that is the one thing I am grateful for Twitter for teaching me. That limit of patience that I have, that I will not change for anybody. If you waste your interactions with me to try to troll and get a gotcha, you're gone. It really is that simple. And even on YouTube, because I know that none of my Bonnet Chronicles will ever be monetized, I'm not safe for work. These podcasts, if you're watching them, I really hope that you put a headset on, because I cuss. I am very blunt. Welcome to the chat, G. Feldman. I just realize that being unapologetically me isn't for everybody, and the reason I put these up there, these aren't for profit, y'all. I know it's hard to believe in this day and age because most people who do these things are for making themselves famous and making a quick buck. I just care. And it's really hard to get through the minutiae of those who just want to be famous, just want to make a name for themselves. But I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to keep doing me and hopefully make an impact that way. That's all I can do. And I want you to know how much I appreciate you, because I will give Twitter that too. Without Twitter, I probably wouldn't have met so many of you. But like everything, you have to walk away when things become more negative than positive. And the last 2 years, Twitter was becoming so much of a negative. And I had so many positive things going on. Axiom moved in almost 2 years ago. Kiddos doing great in school. We are doing fine. My mom is gone. Things are moving in a good path in my life. So why do I chain myself to something that is constantly bringing negative, constantly argumentative, constantly raising my blood pressure when I finally have contentment in my life? I don't think it's right to have that just to have some kind of balance. I know this world isn't where it needs to be. I don't need a social media app to tell me that. I stay informed. I keep on the news publications. I have to read through that as it is. The only thing I will say I will regret about not being on Twitter is we definitely, for those of you who are going to stay, need you to push back against the trust fund journalists, the people who are hashtag activists, who want you to come out of pocket for them to go to Jamaica, but aren't really doing anything to make things better for us. So if you're going to stay on Twitter, I really hope you pick up the slack for that. Because honestly speaking, that's all I was doing towards the end. Is constantly combating the misinformation, the people who are just fraudsters. And if that's what you want to do, great. But that's all you're going to end up doing on that app. And I would much rather move on to a place where I can just be myself, talk about issues, but also talk about fun things again. I started Twitter as a hubbub for a job to talk about gaming and geekery. I miss that aspect. I miss being able to talk about shows that I like to watch without it devolving into fights and arguments. So I'm hoping that once Common Ground figures out its bandwidth issues, that maybe they'll have it together. I'm still not sure about Counter Social. I'm still doing my digging for that, even though I set up an account with them as well. There's just so much going on with trying to find a new home, and it's going to be a while, but until then, you'll see me on Discord. I'm under Nixie on there because I normally use that for gaming, but I put my full name next to that as well. I'm normally in Axiom Wolf's Den because that's the Discord Greg and I created for our gaming and geekery thing. He gave me a little hubbub in there, so if you ever just want to hang out in there and chat, feel free. My thing is, I don't want to cut the lines of communication. I just need to be careful where I communicate, who gets my content, who profits off of it. I gave Twitter 10 good years, actually 11 good years of my life, of my creativity, and I realized I don't have much to show for it except for high blood pressure. So me walking away is a no-brainer. And like I said, I don't want people thinking, oh, this is for me to judge you. I hope I don't come across that way. And of course, do you feel me? Especially Friday. Fridays is the most set and solid day for me to do the Bonnet Chronicles. So Friday evenings, unless I don't feel good, and I will let people know ahead of time on Twitter, and I will do live announcements if I ever have to cancel. But Friday night Bonnet Chronicles are a go, and these Tuesdays are definitely a go, especially during the midterms. And if I ever have to do a special, I will try to get word out any way, shape, or possible. Definitely on Discord will be an announcement. These are going to keep going. You know, I know that me leaving Twitter, people are going to spread all kinds of rumors about, well, she gave this up, she'll give that up. No. Bonnet Chronicles were just tied to Twitter because it was easier for me to get the word out and to retweet whenever I uploaded it to YouTube. But I plan on keeping my YouTube channel. I plan on keeping this Twitch channel. I'm not going anywhere. I've just changed where I'm going to feature my content. And I want you to know that I love all of you. You have been so supportive, not just as followers, but as friends. I know that several of us have talked on and off that app, and we will continue to. You know, and I know it's hard right now because, like I said, it's like leaving the stoop for me. When I first moved down to New York in 95 and moved to the South of all places, it was not only a culture shock, but it was, I don't know this place anymore. And I got to start new. And it was scary at first, but I just leaned into it. I brought myself unapologetic, and it made it work. And that's why I know that while leaving Twitter is going to be sad for a bit, it wasn't impossible. And I'll just lean into wherever I go into next, being who I am, unafraid of who I am. And that's the thing I want you to realize that, I know with Twitter, then anonymity helped a lot of people because of their jobs and stuff. But it also made a vacuum of people who thought, I can dox you. Y'all have to learn how to be yourself on social media. Honestly speaking, most of the people who have problems on social media are the people who wear that mask, that face, that pretend to be something they aren't, and you give people ammo. Be you openly, and you'll surround yourself with amazing people. I know I have. So that's what I'm going to get ready to wrap this up with. I definitely will be back on Friday. Like I said, appreciate all of yous for sitting in on this, and for real, these Bonnet Chronicles, they aren't just therapy for me. This is a way for me to help anybody struggling with mental health, struggling in tough political districts, or just want friends. I think of everybody that sits in these chats as friends. And I know people are like, oh, you're just trying to form parasocial. I don't care. I don't make friends naturally anyway. And I'm tired of people shitting on the fact that you can make friends in the virtual setting. So many people want to look down on things that are natural for us. Naturally speaking, it was easier for me to weed through bullshitty people online. So I do not look down on the friendships I made with you guys, and I appreciate you all. Exactly, Beans. I am here for the neurotypical people, for the people who struggle with anxiety and social issues. I refuse to let people look down on the ways we connect with people. This is important to me, and that's why I want you to know you are not losing me just because I won't post on Twitter anymore. And I want you to know that I really do cherish our friendship, and I really hope that we continue to grow and be, but at a nice, slow pace. This is a lot more manageable for me than Twitter ever was. When I say my mentions are still a shambles, and it's only been a freaking day. I don't miss that already. I don't miss the anxiety of I didn't say hi to somebody, or I didn't like their tweet, or I literally had DMs from people that would yell at me because I didn't notice their tweets, and that brings anxiety. I don't miss that, y'all. And I hope you understand that, and that you realize that if one day you get to that point, good on it. But if you don't, that's fine too. Nobody should judge you for how you make your connections. Nobody should judge you for how you interact with people. Because honestly speaking, being from New York, interacting with humans physically was never good for me anyway. I was always guarded anyway because especially 80s New York was a kind of a rough place still. So yeah, this is my wheelhouse, and I won't let anybody shit on how we socialize, because that's what this is all about. And exactly, G Feldman, and that's what I feel like I'm doing, and I just wanted people to know I am not here to bag on Twitter. I honestly feel like there's a mix of emotions for me. I went from anger that a billionaire like Musk could just buy this place out and talk about freedom of speech, to just accepting that it was time for me to move on anyway. A little bit of sadness that I won't see everybody's tweets on a daily basis, but relief at that as well. It's just a mixture of so many things, but I do feel content that I'm doing the right thing. And that's what I'm going to go with. This is the right decision. And it is not to say that I won't miss certain people on there. But if I have reached out to you in DMs and given you my email address, or for those of you who happen to get the new phone number, know that I did that for a reason. I know that I don't reach out to people myself. I'm never comfortable just always initiating stuff. But if you ever need a friend, if you just need somebody that will just listen, reach out. That's what I don't give out that information willy-nilly. I do it because I sense this is a person that might need an ear from time to time. And as an introvert, I am good at listening. Don't ask for advice though if you don't really want it. That's a peeve of mine. I'm gonna be 100% before I wrap this up, because a lot of people used to do that to me and they would get their feelings hurt. Don't ask for advice if you don't intend to take it, because I hate giving advice as it is. And too many people who ask you for advice and then get upset when you give them blunt advice. And I grew up with blunt people. So you ask me something about relationships and I tell you how I feel about relationships, don't get mad. Like, you ask for opinions. But honestly speaking, so many of you have made the experience of Twitter a good thing. And I want you to know that. That experience is what really made it hard for me to make that decision. But it was years in the making. I honestly felt like towards the end I was forcing myself to be on there. And this just gave me the kick in the butt I needed to cut it cold turkey. Exactly, Beans. I think that's another thing. Those of us who have had to deal with the people who created us formatively being awful, we know how to just detach and walk away from toxic situations when we get to that limit. And that's just what I'm doing with this. And it's like I said, I don't have to shit on Twitter because the app itself isn't the problem. And I just feel like the problem is going to keep getting bigger until somebody who actually gives a crap owns it. And that's not going to be until this idiot tanks it. So if you want to stay on that ship, go ahead. But I'm telling you, my old witch vibes don't lie. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And I just don't have the mental health to deal with that. But if that's on you, if you want to fight the good fight, please do. Know that I am not judging you on this. But for real, that's it. I will be back on Friday with all new topics, things to talk about. If you ever have a topic or suggestion that you want me to talk about, we can. I was reading the news today, and there is so much going on. So much in the wake of hate rising. And that's why we have to combat it with hope. It's real easy to sit here and complain about all the bad in the world, but when you're not putting any good alternatives, what's the point? I want to give people good alternatives. So we will be back on Friday with those, with solutions, with fun things to talk about. Thank you so much for sitting in. I'm going to get ready to go make dinner before the teen wakes up and starts pacing. He had a long day today with school anyway. But thank you all for tuning in. I'll have this up on YouTube soon. And, I know I will not ask people to get the word out for me. Once I find a new social media hub, I'll share the links that way. But if you do want to let other people know about these Bonnet Chronicles, it will be appreciated. It's not expected, but it is appreciated, helping me spread the word. But I'm going to wrap this up. I will see you all on Friday. Love y'all and take it easy.